Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Theruvan Saranai. Today we will be talking about how to correlate the two dosa citta, the consciousness rooted in hatred, with the dasa akusala kammapatha, unwholesome causes of action. First, we will look at the 10 unwholesome causes of action, the dasa akusala kammapatha. Now, as you would remember, we spoke about kamma, and when it comes to kamma, kamma occurs through the 3 doors of action, which are the body door, the verbal door, or the mind door. So through these doors, kamma is generated, either good or bad kamma. The kaya kamma, bodily action, there are 3 akusala kammapatha related to the kaya kamma. These are pāṇātipato, killing, adinādānaṃ, stealing, and kāmesu micchāchāro, sexual misconduct. The 4 vaci kamma, verbal action, are musāvādo, false speech, pisuna vāca, slandering, parusa vāca, harsh speech, and sampappalāpo, frivolous talk. And finally, the mental actions, the manokamma, are abhijja, covetousness, which is the wish to acquire another person's property, vyapada, ill will, that is the wish that another being meets with some sort of harm or affliction, and micchā ditti, wrong view. Now, it is important to know the difference between the words kamma, volitional activity, and the word kammapatha, causes of action. Now, the first 7 out of the 10 kammapatha, those are the 3 kaya kamma and the 4 vaci kamma. These first 7 causes are identified with the volition or the cetana, which initiates an effort to accomplish a certain action. Now, this cetana or this initial volition is an unwholesome kamma, regardless of whether or not the action is completed. Now, for instance, if I give you an example, let's say there is a mosquito and I develop the volition or the cetana to kill it. So I lift up my hand and I slap it. However, the mosquito gets away and I am unable to kill the mosquito. But that initial cetana, the initial volition was to kill. Therefore, I generated an unwholesome kamma. However, because I could not complete the task, that particular kamma does not reach its full potential because the act of killing was not fulfilled. Therefore, we say that it did not become a full course of action, or it did not become a kammapatha. So, if I was successful in killing this mosquito, then it would be a kamma that has reached the stage of completion. So the death of that intended victim needs to be completed in order to say that pāṇātipato or that kammapatha that kamma has become a kammapatha. So the characteristic of a kammapatha or a full course of action is being a kamma with the potency to take on the rebirth generating role. Now that is the difference between kamma and kammapatha. A kamma, when it reaches its full potential, it becomes a kammapatha. Thereby, it becomes a very potent type of kamma, which has the ability to take on the role of a rebirth generating kamma. We will now look at the akusala kammapatha, the unwholesome causes of action that can occur as a result of dosa citta, hatred-rooted consciousness. Out of the three kaya kamma, bodily action, pāṇātipato, killing, as well as adinādāna, stealing, can occur through a dosa citta, or as a result of a dosa citta. And you must remember that killing, pāṇātipato, when it comes to killing, it is always as a result of a dosa citta. However, stealing can be either due to a dosa citta or it could be as a result of a lobha citta. So there, depending on what the initial intention of stealing was, the type of consciousness that arises may vary. But when it comes to killing, it is always a dosa citta that gives rise to that sort of action. Next, out of the four vachi kamma, all four can occur as a result of dosa citta. These are musavado, false speech, pisuna vacha, slandering, parusa vacha, harsh speech, and sampappalapo, frivolous talk. Out of the three manokamma, mental action, only vyapado, ill will, the wish to see another being meet with some sort of harm or affliction, arises as a result of a dosa citta. Now there are several instances, there are other instances when dosa citta can occur. Now what we were talking about before were the kammapatha, that means the strong kamma that have the rebirth generating potential. Now here we are going to talk about the less powerful, the less strong forms of dosa citta. When speaking or listening to ill of others, when hearing others speaking ill of you or your loved ones, when your subordinates are not obedient to you, when you see the wrong acts of another, or when you think someone may have acted wrongly, when others do not show the same care when handling objects that you take great efforts to protect, when others ask for things that you own, when you do not receive something that you ask for, when someone does not accept your point of view, when you recall the acts of an enemy, the death of a loved one, or when one sees another receiving much respect, much wealth or fame, it arises in the form of jealousy. A common misconception about dosa citta is that dosa citta occurs only when a person is angry. However, dosa can arise in many phases, in varying degrees of intensity. So now, when does a dosa citta arise? A dosa citta arises when one encounters an undesirable object. So there is some sort of aversion towards that object. So whenever one feels sad, angry, disappointed, annoyed, irritated, or depressed, or jealous, there is some form of aversion towards the object. And all of these are examples of different phases of the dosa citta occurring in different degrees of intensity. So with that, we conclude our talk where we spoke about how the dosa citta arises in relation to the dasa akusala kammapatha. And we will continue with our next lesson, where we will be talking about the moha citta, delusion-rooted consciousness.